Hello, let's talk about a difficult subject today. Let's talk about ethics and ethical decision making. This is chapter 17 of this book, Invitation to Computer Science by Schneider and Gerstek. Here we're going to be learning to use ethical reasoning to evaluate social issues related to computing and AI mainly. Understanding issues involved in digital sharing, copywritten, intellectual property such as music, videos, photographs, books, and video game software. Discuss trade-offs between the rights of personal privacy and governments concerned with safety and security. Provide arguments that support or oppose hackers who claim to be performing a social good. Describe cyberbullying and why legal remedies are so difficult to apply. Explain the potential dangers that have arisen from enormous growth of social media. Discuss how social media makes it easier to globally disseminate rumors and false information that can have a profound effect on governments and worldwide. Most importantly, we're going to be discussing how to think about these questions in an ethical way. What is ethical decision making? That's the core of this lecture. We're going to be studying a few real cases, and the difficulty for me as a lecturer teaching ethics is that I cannot put my own opinion, my own ethical opinion on that. But I'll try my best to teach you the method for thinking about ethical questions. So basically, we start with having a question about what is the most ethical course of action for a given problem. And the material developed in this chapter helps you to, it gives you a starting point on answering this question. You can also use the material in this book to justify your choice, given that you have made a decision on a particular ethical question and you want to use the material to justify your course, to back it with some ethical reasoning procedures. Now, social and ethical issues related to information technology are unavoidable, especially if we start dealing with artificial intelligence, with making inferences on people's behavior, on people's appearances, or autonomous decision, right? And the key issue is that just because we can do something, given the knowledge that we're acquiring in AI, in computer vision, and computing, doesn't mean we should apply. We should do it, right? And as I said, we're going to be seeing case studies introducing a few key ethical issues. So what is ethics? Ethics is the study of how to decide if something is morally right or wrong. How do we judge right or wrong? So there are a few solutions for that, a few answers for this question. One of them is given by consequentialism. Consequentialism is a line of thought, a school of thought that focuses on the consequences of an act. Focuses on the whole good or bad outcomes that your action brings. One way of measuring it is using ideas from utilitarianism. It's a long story to introduce utilitarianisms. There are people studying these utilitarian theories in social sciences, in economics. We're going to see in a nutshell. We're going to apply in a few moments some ideas of utilitarianism, some very basic ideas, which basically look for the overall good for a number of stakeholders. The stakeholders in this context are just people who are directly affected by a decision. And we use utilitarian summation, meaning we sum up the goodness and subtract the badness of the actions to be taken in order and weight the probabilities of the action's outcomes. And given the best action is that with the highest utilitarian value. Few methods for ethics reasoning. Why do we need ethics reasoning? Basically, we use that to detach ourselves from the questions to be analyzed. That gives us emotional distance. And we have to bear in mind that not every decision is an ethical one. If you like to eat, I don't know, a particular type of food, this is not an ethical decision most of the times, right? If I like to eat, I don't know, lettuce, if I like to eat, I prefer asparagus. There's no ethical question behind it, so you should be careful when applying ethics reasoning to the to questions that actually have an ethical content. First case study that we're going to see is it's a quite old one. But it's still quite influential. Which is the Napster. I'm not sure if you remember what Napster was. It was a file sharing system developed in 1999. It was a peer-to-peer file sharing, where the software, what Napster was doing was just introducing users to each other. And each user had a directory of music from his own library of CDs transformed into MP3s. And the software allows sharing, but it allows sharing, but the software itself does not share. The sharing happens directly between the users. So the recording companies filed suit against Napster, and the lawsuit claimed that Napster was a conspiracy to encourage mass infringement of copyright. Just for as a so that you can understand, so it's a user B. That's how Napster worked. You have a user B with a library of MP3 and a user A. And Napster central server was only doing the link between these two users, saying, well, look, this guy, user A, wants a music that this user has. And that was it. The file transfer was done directly from between user A and user B without passing through the Napster central servers. Okay, so the question is Napster actually infringing the copyright, or is Napster, or the persons infringing copyright were the actual users sharing the document? So a few facts. Most shared music was copyrighted. Many artists opposed sharing, so meaning there were no revenue for them. And some artists supported sharing by saying that's a way of getting them more famous and getting more people to their concerts, especially the beginners and artists at the beginning of their careers. Napster claims were that it only reported song locations, not involved in the actual sharing, as I explained here. And they were not responsible for users' behaviors. So if the users wanted to share, that's users' fault. That's not Napster's fault. In swapping files this way should be fair use under the copyright law. At the end, I could get my CD and just lend you for a few weeks, give you you could listen to my CD as much as you want and then return it to me. Napster lost the case in all the appeals and closed in 2001. But it's still quite a timely question, because sharing movies legally or not, is a growing issue. Downloading images from the web for personal use. Now, what are the ethical and not legal questions? Is it right to swap copyrighted music files? Is it right to provide a search engine to enable users to search each other's databases for copyrighted materials? These are the ethical questions. Let's see the utilitarian arguments. Copying, assuming that copying is okay, there are many more music users than publishers. That's correct. Music users are happy to get free access to music. Publishers get publicity for their products. These are all positive points for copying, for sharing files via Napster. File sharing is akin to hearing a song on the radio. Many users buy a song after listening to it. That's true, all true. Dropping in sales may relate to more purchasing song by song rather than album. That has to be proved. Now, utilitarian argument 2, copying, assuming that copying is not okay. Early on, MP3 sharing encouraged CD sales, but this was not a long-term trend, as there was if you look at the history, there was a reduction in sales after the introduction of MP3 sharing. iTunes and Amazon sell one song at a time to compete with illegal file sharing. If publishers cannot profit, then less music will be made in the future, right? There won't be any motivation for the publishers to sponsor new albums and to generate big enterprises, big shows and big albums. Copyright protection is the law. And music file sharing is clearly illegal. Encouraging illegal behavior is wrong. Now, what do you think? Do you think an utilitarian argument, which one weighs more? The utilitarian argument 1, that says that copying is okay given these facts, they are actually facts, or the utilitarian argument 2, copying is not okay. Which one has a better value? That's what utilitarian theory does. It's going to put a value on each one of these items from positive and negative and see the probability of each one actually happening and get the best value, right? You can do this yourself. As I said, I have to be careful in this lecture not to put my own opinions into it, but just to show you the methods for ethics reasoning. And one method is the utilitarian argument. So you weigh the positive and negative arguments, put values to it, weight the values by the probability of them happening, and then get the action with the highest value. So this is utilitarian argument. So our first technique for ethical reasoning. Another technique is called dialectics. Dialectics is the goal, has as a goal for both sides to win by moving closer to the truth from two distinct perspectives. It's a dialogue that explores an issue from both sides and leads to greater understanding. It's a little bit like a utilitarian argument, but we are going to try to, each argument convince each other on whether this is good and bad, or bad, and reach a consensus at the end. That's the goal of dialectics. Let's see how it works on case 1. An example in dialectics says, facts are that music sales have dropped continuously. Long-term arguments that less music would be published is a strong one. Lesser known artists may use file sharing to become better known depending on income or performances. Then there is an opportunity to rethink the music industry from a new viewpoint. What do you think from this dialectical argument? Is file sharing good or bad? Is file sharing, it's not a question of being good or bad. Is file sharing ethical or non-ethical? This is the key issue. Right, a few more facts to allow you on your dialectics. A common belief pre-2003 is that once people get accustomed with file sharing, there'll be no stop and the music industry would just disappear and there won't be any more albums and we'll be very sad people in the future. But in 2003, iTunes Store was brought to life, plus there was the launch of iPod, the introduction of the iPod. And the idea of Steve Jobs at the time when he introduced iTunes and iPods, that if costs were reasonable and value-added services were provided, people would be willing to pay for legal access to copyrighted music rather than going through via the illegal way of downloading MP3s. And just in 1 year, in the first week, there were 1 million downloads of music in the iTunes Store. 1 million in a week. By 2016, there were over 30 billion downloads. Now, I put you the question again, is file sharing ethical or not? Put this into your considerations as well when running the dialectics and when running the utilitarian arguments, right? And this is a good example of utilitarian arguments. There is a value here, right? So you can use this value as the utilitarian value that you're going to take into account when analyzing the question of, is sharing ethical or not? Okay, so in the next video, we're going to see a second case study, which is privacy versus security. That's also a very serious modern question. I'll see you in a bit.